Shoot high, I mean, it's a moonshot to go, I've got this concept and I'm going to have Kofi Annan and Desmond Tutu there. I didn't know them. I didn't even know anybody who knew those people. That's how, and it took long, it took long. But it just says, my daughter always says, put one foot in front of the other. And I do think if you do that, you get there. I do.
Cool. So thank you so much for joining the podcast. So just a background. So Not Your Everyday podcast. I essentially interview people like yourself, people. I've interviewed Michael Hastings, I've interviewed Paul Polman a few weeks ago. And essentially we come on the podcast to talk about growth moments, the moment that you decided to grow without the need to ask for permission. So what I want to do is essentially allow people who have big ideas, big visions for themselves to understand in that moment that they need to grow or go to that next level, go to that next stage. How did other people do it? So it could be junior leaders, it could be senior leaders, it could be anyone, but they've made that transformation. And I wanted to, of course, invite you on the podcast and interview you because you've led a global movement that's changed many people's lives, including mine. We met in One Young World, I think it was Colombia, maybe 2017, probably in the green room or somewhere with Michael Hastings. And then obviously you gave me a platform to speak in a conference in 2018 at The Hague. And I just want to say thank you for that opportunity. I've been an ambassador since then.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it's changed my life. And I can honestly say that it's really given me the platform and the confidence to just go on to do bigger and better things. And it made me myself. So I just wanted to start with that because you have been influential in my life. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity that you've given me.
I'm honoured, hugely honoured.
Great. And of course, you've also had, you published me in your book as well, How to Make a Difference. And I've been reading that. And especially during this time, activism, the definitive guides for effective activists. It's more important now than ever. So it's definitely a great book to read for anybody who hasn't read it yet. So I wanted to introduce Kate Robertson to One Young World. I'm sorry, to Not Your Everyday podcast. And just to give you a bit of background so that other people who might not know your achievements so far. So just as a summary, formerly global president of the advertising giant, the Havas Worldwide. You've co-founded One Young World with David Jones in 2009, and then you've obviously launched summits every year since then, bringing together thousands, tens of thousands of young leaders, basically, in every country, giving them a voice to affect change among governments and businesses worldwide. People call it Junior Davos. I've been twice, and it's an amazing experience. Over the last decade, obviously, you've brought together almost 12,000 young people. Influential political, business, and humanitarian leaders have been on the stage. Meghan Markle, Kofi Annan, Desmond Tutu, Bob Geldof, Paul Polman, Bill Clinton, loads of people, to name a few, even Professor Muhammad Yunus as well. And it's just an amazing movement and summit and event, and also just organization that you've created. So congratulations on that success. Over 190 businesses that you've worked with, Goldman Sachs, Google, Facebook, Coca-Cola, KPMG, Goldman Sachs, all sorts, Unilever, etc. And it's just a big achievement when you look back at how much you've progress and impact that you've made. And I'm sure you didn't have that initial idea when you first started it. So is there anything else that I've missed in your intro?
No, and I'm absolutely delighted, slightly surprised and overwhelmed.
Great. So the first question I wanted to ask you was more about just Tell me your life story in 1 minute. So I've given your successes. So maybe just from childhood up until where you are now in 1 minute. So I'm going to
I
time
was
you.
born in South Africa, lived the first 30 years of my life in South Africa, studied law at the University of Cape Town for 6 years, got my LLB, left, went into advertising, eventually was transferred to the UK in 1986, married in 89, had my one and only fabulous daughter in 1991, reached the pinnacle of advertising, I guess, as a global president, and on the way found a passion from when I was 4 years old for the Olympic movement, and had the great good fortune to have an idea out of nowhere, which I think has some value, and that's One Young World.
Amazing. Thank you, Kate. So I'm going to start off with the first question. How do you define success in your life? I chose this question because everybody has different answers, and I'm sure it's changed over your career, etc. But for people who are trying to understand their own definition and trying to shape what success looks for them, how do you define success in your life?
Because I'm quite a fearful person, I think I've learned over the years that for me, success is peace of mind. And peace of mind comes from all sorts of things, whether it's reconciliation when you've done something wrong, whether it's trying your hardest, doing your very, very, very best, maybe succeeding, maybe not, to the outside world. There are things that you know yourself that give you peace of mind. And I always say that for everybody has to be a goal, is your own peace of mind. No one can take that from you, but no one can create that for you. That is something, it's a two-way thing, but you need that. And for me, that's the most important thing. That for me is success. When those moments when I have that, then it's okay.
Excellent. So we're going to get into your moments of growth, which is One Young World, and there's many others I'm sure that you can probably name. But the one that I want to focus on initially is One Young World. But before we get to that stage, when was the moment you started to believe in yourself? So you obviously reached the pinnacle, as you said, in advertising industry. So obviously to get to that pinnacle, you had to go through a number of challenges. You had to go through get promoted and go work at XYZ, all these different companies. So what was the moment that you actually started to believe that you could reach the top of the advertising world? When can you remember that moment?
I don't think I ever did. I had through my life flashes of self-belief, just flashes, I think, because I'm a very fearful person. I think those flashes of self-belief came from moments when I would do public speaking as a youngster at school, or selling, or whatever speeches I did, where I would see people change their minds and remember what I had said. And then I would think, I have something, there is some talent there. And I think that always stayed and kind of kept me going. I don't know when, I don't know that I believe in myself all the time, but I think that comes from deep inside being a fearful person.
So that's interesting that you've had moments or flashes of like seeing your future self, or seeing a moment where you know you could do better and become better. So I guess my next question would be, when you had moments of fear, as you said that you're quite a fearful person, how do you overcome those moments?
I can cope with them now in later years. I mean, I'm not young, but the thing that has helped me most, and it's so sad, is I've learned only in the last 18 months that children, when they're very, very small, who are separated from their mums, And my mom went back to work when I was a very tiny baby, as indeed I had to do when I had my daughter. But then I spent my days until I was 3.5. I would go to a family with their children, which I hated to do. And I was paranoid that at my mom leaving me, and my mom and my parents were wonderful to me and they adored me. But for some reason, I got from a baby this, apparently it's a fight or flight thing that should properly adjust, that people have an adjustment. And I never did. And I never understood throughout my life how, you know, my daughter says other people go through stages before they panic, where my daughter said you go from calm to full ball panic in, you know, 0 to 60 seconds. And I never knew that this is from babyhood. And I never understood why, how I just couldn't cope. If someone said, you know, a boyfriend was leaving me, why I completely lost my mind. And I mean, lost my mind. And I think that fearfulness is, you know, and I'm better with it now, because now when I fear something like the impact of COVID-19 on One Young World, I process it more rationally without, which I've spent my whole life doing, but I never knew. So I think these things, you know, people, you keep hearing wise people, particularly One Young World, talking about early stage learning and mothers and babies. And, you know, there's someone like me from this very secure, happy home that had this trauma that, you know, my poor mother would just turn in her grave to hear me talk about. But I didn't realize how deep that can run and how primal and animal it is. It's completely irrational, but there it is. So, you know, for me, actually, I'm glad I know now. But I think when you know why you feel something, you can address it.
And I guess one final question on just the early years is, what was the one skill that got you to the top of Havas in advertising, like as a global president? If you, and there's many skills that got you there, but if you were to kind of hone in on the one skill that made you reach there, what would that have been?
I think that I was fortunate in that David Jones had worked under me on the Unilever business 10 years before I joined Havas. I was fortunate that he was there. I was fortunate in David's ambition, because David wanted to be the global head of that network. And there he was. And I said to him, I'm going to help you and back you on this. So there's a skill. I'm a good service person. I really do understand serving you, backing you up. I'm really good at that, you know. But skill other than that, and I was lucky with David, so lucky. But if you take the David thing out of that, the skill always that has seen me through was public speaking. I learned when I was about 9 years old that I could get on my feet in front of a room of people and talk and to explain things, and it's a gift.
How did you know that you were good at public speaking at 9 years old? Like, what was it? Did you get feedback? Did you just
I had a teacher called Mrs. Shimwell. We were about 32 kids in our class. And one day she said, and now we're going to do, it wasn't called public speaking, I don't know, it was making speeches or something like that. And then you were told a thing, and I think 4 of us did it the first day. And they'd say, Olu, you stand up and talk about anything, you know, personal hygiene, your mother, your father, standing on your head, whatever it was. I don't even remember what I talked about. I remember I stood rah, 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 and sat down, and the class applauded. And Mrs. Schimmel looked at me and said, that's incredible. And then you just realize some people have that thing. And it's funny because my nephew, my late sister's boy, who's 50 now, he has it, also seen very young. And of course, my daughter, aged, I think 6 or 7, was on her feet debating at school. So but it's a public speaking, the ability to take people with you, such a big skill, such an important thing. And I think there's natural talent, but I do think it's something you can learn. And I do think it's really worth practicing.
That's amazing that you remember that moment. You remember the teaching.
Yeah,
You remember the
funny,
feeling.
hey.
Yeah, and it's that,
Don't remember what I talked about. I wish I knew what I talked about. It was probably nonsense.
no, but it's what the feeling that you got from it that made you realize that you had the confidence to speak
Yeah.
publicly. Because some people like would have that opportunity pass them by, like they would have been congratulated by the teacher and then, you know, move on and not realize it's actually a skill and they should focus on it. So, you know, well done for you for acknowledging that. And also
I probably at that age didn't know it was a skill. I just thought I was a fancy boots, you know, because
yeah.
the teacher said, oh, really?
Okay, so just if we move on to kind of the moments of growth when you started One Young World, when was the moment you realized you wanted to start the global movement, the global charity or the not-for-profit organization, however you thought of it at the time? What was the moment that you realized that you wanted to do that, and how did you feel?
Well, it was two things, because, you know, I'm an Olympic freak with this deep, lifelong passion for the Olympic movement. The Olympic flame, the Olympic truce. And for me, you know, yes, like you, I have an official religion, but my life religion is definitely the Olympic movement. So I had that, and then I just had this thing that at Havas we should, if we had a conference, it would be for young people because we were the youngest network. Jones was the youngest CEO, so we would be cooler than other people. So it was purely a marketing construct. But when I went home that night, we went to supper in Primrose Hill, me and my husband actually, and my nephew and his now husband. And I said, oh, you know, we should have a conference where there would be people from every country, which is where the Olympic thing feeds in. And my nephew said, oh, I think, you know, that's very difficult with young people from certain countries, you know, that, you know, they'll be controversial, they'll be this, they'll be that. And that for me was the moment. I still remember what I ordered to eat that night. Because I got in the car and I went, oh, so there'll be controversy. Well, you could help if there's controversy. They could be talking to each other. They could know each other. They could be Olympics for leaders. Oh my God. And that was, I still remember, I remember that as clearly as day. And you know how long ago that is? That is so, so long ago. That is, I think that's March 2008.
Amazing. Olympic for leaders. So that's what it could have been called. And so so what got you from the idea to the implementation?
Oh, Olive, it's such a long story and it was so awful. I cannot tell you. It was so awful. I had no idea what I was doing. So to me it was, oh, we're having a conference. Oh, lots of people will sponsor it. Oh, this is going to be easy. What? And people going, what's this conference? Conference for young people? There are thousands of those. What? And I'm going, no. And when you try to get someone to sponsor, the first question is, which I didn't know, which is so stupid, who's underwriting it? Answer, nobody. Then we're not sponsoring it. Oh dear. So the learning, you know, people talk about a learning curve, and I say with One Young World, those first 18 months, it was up a vertical ladder. It wasn't a curve. So I think that initial road, those initial steps, when you have an idea to its physical reality, are hard. And why? Because people don't have to go with a concept. They can say it's a nice idea, but they're not going to do it for you. They're not going to fix it for you. And I know that. And it was really tough. What made the difference was making myself articulate what the thing was for, being clear about that, which in the beginning I wasn't. What is it for? And then looking for models that could get it off the ground. I mean, if you look and you're in the One Young World community as a brilliant One Young World ambassador yourself, but the work of One Young World is much more than the summits, as you know. It's like what you and I are doing today. And these things go on 24 hours a day around the world. So this networking, this talking, this sharing ideas, supporting each other in action, 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 all the time. But none of that could have happened if we couldn't have had that first summit in 2010. So it was articulating it in such a way and planning. What do you want? You want young leaders. No one gives a toss about young leaders. Fact. How do we make them care? You can only make other people care about young leaders if you connect those young leaders to the mainstream media. Social media doesn't cut it. It should, but it doesn't. Yeah. So how do you do that? You need very famous people, because mainstream media will pay attention to very famous people. What can those people offer? Aha. Those old leaders can inspire those young ones. So that was the early thing. But even that, you know, was things like that there's a well-known photograph of Bill Clinton at Oxford shaking hands or seeing John F. Kennedy. And Clinton himself talks about that. And you can see on a young Clinton's face, that could be me. So it's knowing that spark in people like yourself, in young leaders, it's there somewhere. So who gets that thing? Who goes, hey, it's you? And that's not obvious. It's rational, though. It's rational. But when we got to, I think who was the first was Geldof, and then Tutu. When I got to them and they said, oh, this is quite a good idea. I think Bob said, well, it's creative enough. And then Mr. Annan. And now you're carrying a responsibility, because these are some of the world's great leaders telling you that your ideas sound. Then you better execute, huh? And I think it's that execute. Show me something. You know, the One Young World logo?
Yep.
I mean, that I got done by a freelancer, can't remember his surname, his first name was Matthew, was done for me at one of my Havas companies, Conran Design Group. And the reason I got him to do it, and this is in 2008, was I knew I had to have something to show people that people would think the concept was real. So all I had was this little 6-page deck with this little logo on it, and a name that was a working title, and a logo that wasn't finished. And it was those things. So I think those elements of get the wording right, get your show and tell right, shoot high, you know? I mean, it's a moonshot to go, I've got this concept and I'm going to have Kofi Annan and Desmond Tutu there. I didn't know them. I didn't even know anybody who knew those people. That's how, and it took long, you know, it took long. But it just says, my daughter always says, put one foot in front of the other. And I do think if you do that, you get there. I do.
That's amazing. That's really inspiring. I'm just listening now, thinking, like, just it starts from the small seed, and
yeah.
It's unprofessional. It starts, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just gonna go with it. You don't know all the answers at the beginning, but you just start, right? So, but I guess the key thing is, as you mentioned, you were able to get key, high-profile celebrities who were leaders, to back your.
But, it took long, you know.
Yeah. So tell me about that. Like,
it took 13 months for Bob. It took 11 months for Tutu, and it took 13, 14 months with Mr. Annan.
And they all came at different stages, right?
No. That was the best thing. So the London summit was in February 2010 and was 837 delegates. And we had the opening at Billingsgate Fish Market. It was freezing cold. It was the beginning of February and it was snowing. It was bloody snowing. And we had all the delegates on boats on the Thames. They nearly died. We nearly killed them. It was so cold.
Really?
And then we were at Billingsgate and I had this, being a marketing person, I wanted this image for the press of these great leaders on the pier there outside Billingsgate or on the bank of the river.
Yeah.
Greeting the delegates arriving. Didn't quite work, but it kind of did. But David said afterwards that he thought that Bob and Desmond and Mohammed Yunus and Kofi were appearing by video. He didn't think they were really there.
Really?
The buggers were there. They were actually there. And I was so overwhelmed. And Boris Johnson was late. And we kept these incredibly important people waiting. And I was hiding under the stage at one point, clutching my chest with David saying, "What's the matter with you?" And I promise, Olu, I had such a pain in my chest. I really thought I was having a heart attack.
Wow. Wow.
What a ninny. What a sissy.
A lot of pressure. Wow, that's amazing. I've never heard you tell these stories before, so it's really amazing to see the originations. Okay, cool. So now, let's move on. So now that you've done the first year, you feel confident, you're starting to build your clientele. What problems did you still have to overcome to continue growing it?
Oh, so many. So many. I think some of the people at Havas were quite proud of it and thought we'd done quite a nice job. I think a lot of them were looking at us and go back to your day job. I was chairing the third biggest region for Havas at the time. I had here in the UK 13 companies. And it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. I was doing my day job. And I did thereafter have some years of brilliant results. So sod that. But it didn't mean the criticism wasn't there. And I'm sure in the shoes of some of those people, maybe I would have felt the same way. I think what was difficult was, you have this wonderful summit and that one was 2.5 days. But it's gone like a flash in a pan, isn't it? It was a moment, We didn't have the movement we have today. I didn't have any staff for a start. And then I had to learn that some of the delegates who had stood out, who were good speakers, so there you go, were not actually going to do anything. And then you realize the public platform and affirmation can be a temporary and quite a shallow thing. I had to think through that I didn't necessarily want all of them to come back the following year, that I wanted them to actually do something. You've heard me saying this. But you don't want to shed them off because now you're in love with these kids, which I certainly was. And I say in love because I really was emotionally completely driven over by them. So that was a learning. Keeping the companies that had sponsored, and there were only about half of those delegates were sponsored, keeping those companies on board was going to be hard. But the early years, getting something to grip and to get traction and keep the damn thing on the road is so much more than you think it is. Mm. And I think then you realize that for it to be the same as one story, but if you're going to survive, it has to grow, and that it was going to take a hell of a lot more, an awful lot more.
Who you said that you started this alongside your day job, so this was a side hustle. So when did you realize the moment when your side hustle could become your main hustle?
we decided, David and I, that it should be a charitable status because we were going to the States in 2012, and because a lot of people and companies in the States want to put money to pay for their delegation into a 501c3. So we had to have charitable status. So we got busy doing that, and that was all one story. And then, of course, David left Havas at the end of 2013. And I kind of knew that he would go and do a bigger thing, but I didn't want him to go because it was inconvenient for my job, but there you go. But when Havas said in early 2014 that they were not prepared to have me spending any time on One Young World, that was very tough. And they wanted me to abandon One Young World completely or lose my job. So I had to get very legal with them at the time and say, look, your previous CEO, i.e. David Jones, your previous chairman, Vincent Bolloré, allowed me to set this up. I have fiduciary and legal duties as the trustee of the charity. I can't just dump it, and you don't have the right to make me dump it either. Yeah. So if I confine my One Young World activities to my own time, you have to let me continue, which eventually they did. But it's a terrible situation to be in because you have some quite nasty people. David's successor as CEO at Havas Worldwide, not at Havas, but at Havas Worldwide, was watching me and was in my email box. And, you know, I was the global president and someone is watching your emails? Oh, come on, grow up. And that was, for me, just shocking. But I had to keep One Young World on its feet. We had to repay £810,000 to Havas during that year of 2014. And then it was, I mean, I knew there were people there who wanted me to go, which I think it was fair? No. I had been doing a brilliant job for them in the UK with fantastic results. But honestly, when I think back now on the age I was, yeah, I was turning 60 in 2015. Advertising industry spits most people out by the time they're 45, certainly by when they're 50. So a part of me was going, yeah, they should want you out. You've passed your sell-by. And I felt that way. I can't say I didn't. I did. And it's difficult to walk away from those high-up positions for all the wrong reasons. And it's also difficult to walk away from the money. It just is. It's a fact. But my heart and my emotions were in One Young World. And I knew that One Young World needed me. And I knew that I had to take up One Young World with everything that I had. And the first 2 years, I think, at One Young World, I mean, I had my payoff from Havas. But the first 2 years at One Young World, I wasn't earning any money. But I just had to get in there and give it everything I had. And I think it says for success with something that you do yourself, you've got to put your hand down inside your brain and your emotions and go, I'm going to give it everything. And you know, it's difficult as a fearful person. You don't easily give something everything because you're scared. And I'm not saying I wasn't scared. I was scared.
So a lot of sacrifices that you had to make.
I don't know that I did, you know, I don't know that it was.
Well, a lot of money.
It's overcoming fear. More than, you know, if you think of it as a sacrifice, it makes you more scared. But I think overcoming it and really being, get real about stuff, you know. If you find it hard that you're no longer called this global blah, 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 you better deal with the fact that it's meaningless. It's meaningless. You know?
Yeah.
And when you've spent 35 years chasing that shit, you don't easily tell yourself it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good. It's good stuff. So you've left Havas, and then you join One Young World full time. You're making a success year after year, building your brand, building the movement, getting more people in, more sponsorship, more partners. So when was the moment when you kind of felt, okay, like, I'm really proud of One Young World, like this is what I wanted it to be? When was that moment?
You know, it is a gift because, oh, and I don't want to start crying when I say this. Every time I speak to one of the ambassadors, like you, who say it made a difference in my life, I just don't care about anything else. I just go, this brilliant young man, it helped him.
Yeah.
And that for me, every time someone says that, and God knows I get a lot of fulfillment like that, I just go, oh, he'll make a difference. She's going to be a star. And they'll get more influence, and they'll be the best leaders the world has ever seen. I just don't care about anything else.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And it's true. It's true. The impact is there, and you know, the influence is there, and just thank you so much.
Well, you know, my big North Star with it, you know what I say? When you guys are the leaders of the G20 nations, they're going to put me in a box and carry me out the door. That will be success.
So, I guess my next question is, having gone through those moments of growth, and you know, your inspiration doesn't necessarily come from the success, but from the leaders, the young leaders, being inspired and their life changing because of the influence that they're accruing, because of the exposure that they're receiving and getting. My next question is, why do you think you are where you are today? Like, what is it about you? I know you said public speaking. Is there anything else about you that got you to where you are now?
I think some luck. I think hard work. Yeah, it has been very, very, very hard work. My God, you know, if the 35 years in advertising leading to Havas, and I worked so hard in those jobs. My God, I have worked 48 times harder since then, which at my age is not funny. I think hard work. I think some luck. I think it's just, you know, it's just luck working with good people, isn't it? I think some people would say it's a science. Maybe it is. And I think that passion, honestly, that passion for the Olympics, you know, I find that so inspirational, but it always pains me that mainstream media go, it's so expensive, the Olympics. And if you think about London 2012, there was a lot of negativity around that. Did it impact our country? Yes. Was the impact to the good? Yes. There was so much pride and joy, real joy in that experience. And that's for me the Olympics. It is so much more. And I wish in mainstream media and social, but mainstream media, I wish the mainstream media would get behind the glory that this can be, the joy that is the human family together. It's so big. It's so big, and it challenges all of our divisive notions, all the things that make the world shit. It's challenged in that spirit, that this flame burns for all of us, that every one of us is human, every one of us is family. For me, it's just bigger than anything else. And as I say, you know, without dissing my church religion, it really is the Olympic flame and the Olympic truths for me are my religion. They really are.
That's amazing. That source of inspiration and hope.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it comes from your view of the Olympics and how it brings people together, essentially. So if we just move on to the last segment in terms of what advice would you give your younger self? So this is something I ask most of my guests, and have a few seconds to think about it, or you might have an answer already. What advice would you give your younger self? If you were to do it all over again or to do something different, what advice would it be?
You know, there were times in my life when I would have said that I should have worked harder. Definitely I should, certainly at university. Drink less, definitely. But you know, I look now and I think to a young person, and this not to be taken the wrong way, I would say, enjoy yourself. And I don't mean get stoned, get off your face, all that nonsense. I just mean, God, you are young ones. It's precious time. It's precious, precious time. Enjoy yourself. Keep an open mind, but enjoy being young.
Thank you. What books or resources allowed you to grow beyond your everyday person? Were there anything that allowed you to feel inspired to go on this moments of growth and this growth trajectory, or were there somebody that you connected with?
I loved this question. It's such a brilliant question because it leads you into the management, those kind of things. And then I was going, no. I love the way you phrased it, to learn beyond yourself. And I think the books that have done me the most service, probably all works of fiction, but books that pushed me beyond sympathy to try for empathy, to understand the experience of the others. So first one, when I was 17, I read a book in Afrikaans called Swart Pelgrim, which is translated as Black Pilgrim. And it was about a man who came from a rural area, when his rural area under stress, to try and find work in a white-dominated South African city. A.J. Fenter wrote it. I'll never forget reading that book. And that being pushed for your heart to break for another person. I think, and others like that. So I think those books about other people's experiences, and the most uplifting of recent. And I think I must be responsible for her sales because I must have given 200 copies to people. Tara Westover's Educated, another memoir from the United States. But I think those books that to your very brilliant question, that ask you beyond yourself to sympathize and to empathize and to, at the very least, understand the other, are huge in my head.
Yeah, that's amazing how you phrase it as well, going from sympathy to empathy, because that's how you really learn to put yourself in other people's shoes, have empathy as a leader.
It's hard and uncomfortable.
Yeah. Final question. 3 practical tips or steps for personal growth without permission. So what I mean by that, sometimes people are waiting to be told what to do, or waiting to be spoon-fed, or waiting for their opportunity. But instead they should just go with what they have, what they currently have, use the tools that they've got, the connections that they have. So what 3 practical steps can you give someone listening for personal growth?
First up, do something for someone else. Whatever your circumstances, however you're feeling, however much money you've got or don't, do something for somebody else. It will put you on a road you didn't expect. You may end up on the road less traveled by, and that will make all the difference. But doing something for someone else is just great advice. Great advice. I think that if you can, read and read and read and read and read. If your sight is challenged, find someone who might help you to be able to read, or to read to you,
Or use
or
audiobooks.
or give you a podcast or audiobooks, whatever it is. But read. And I'm a television freak. I love television. I can watch Netflix for 600 years. Read. You cannot read enough. Doesn't matter what you read, but reading absolutely fundamental. And the other thing is measure. Whether you set goals for yourself or daily, or set a number. Look where you are today, measure where you go to. Doesn't matter what it is, can be fun. I need to lighten up. How many times did you laugh yesterday? Yeah? How many times did you laugh? Because sometimes people are going, oh, man, I feel so miserable. But I saw you laughing the whole day yesterday. Now, you may be putting on laughing, and it may be a mental health issue. But sometimes when you count things, you know, oh, I worked so hard today. And then you go, no, you actually didn't. You did an hour's work. Well, that's a good learning. It says pull your socks up, mate. But measure it. Because in your measuring, you learn. You really do learn.
That's amazing. What the 3 tips that you've given, and what gets measured gets done as well. So it's good to have.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you so much, Kate. This has been really inspirational, really motivational as well. And
you're my inspiration. Thank you.
Just amazing journey. And what I hope people will get from listening to this is just that, you can start from where you are, and you can work your way up, and you can make your dreams come true. As the advice that you've been given, just do something for others, find empathy, work with other people around you, use your networks, and just continue to grow, and before you know it, you'll have a movement, you'll have your company, you'll have your podcast, you'll have whatever it is, and that's the sign of a leader who just continues to be of service, and that's what you are as well. So thank you so much, Kate. Once again, great.
That's my chap. You're a star, Olu. Thank you
so much.